is about creating that illusion of depth in your water scenes. I have a scene that I recently painted from a trip when I was at Glacier National Park in Montana back in September. And I came across this wonderful pool of very cold mountain water stream. And with sunken logs, I actually added more logs than what there were. But it was a wonderful challenge to do a painting that created again that illusion. And what's important is some of the elements that are not only within that water area that you want to look down into, but the other areas that are above the water that help to contrast that element of illusion going into the depth of the water. So let's first look back here. We have part of the scene was a gravel bar that was above the surface of the water, and you can kind of see the ochre color, and then starting to transcend into more of a green ochre, into some of the blue ochre greens, and then finally into more of that aqua color. You've got areas of old sticks and things in the background, some trees, you got some support systems. So that sets up part of the idea that these things are all above. And also there was this large granite rock that was to my right that was kind of coming up out of the water. So part of the granite rock had this wonderful texture to it that I had fun painting that in this larger it's a 26 by 26 size painting square. And so the texture also is another thing that helps to create that contrast of what is above the surface of the water and then what is below the surface of the water, where you do not see much of the texture, but you get an idea of the rock continuing below. The rock changes a value and a color. The light cannot hit any longer on that rock so much as it does where the rock is out of the water. So you have to define the elements that you're working with and then try to paint those transitions. You still have a reflection in the water. You can see the reflection here in the water, but yet there's also reflection, a little bit of, there's a little ripples occasionally that give the surface of the water. And there's also, I put some aspen leaves, since it was fall, some aspen leaves that were on the water. I'll back up and show you the whole scene again. But excuse me, I want to talk about this transition going from out of the water to in the water. And the deeper you go into the water, the less you can make out, and plus it starts to change to more of this blue-green, which is interesting. It was a fun challenge to paint this. And then, of course, the other things that it had were these sunken logs. Now, there's no logs above the surface that, excuse me, that give you a sense of what they are. But hence, that's the idea of the logs in the background. I'll show you that again. Here's more rocks that are below the surface of the water. You can see because there is some surface that's painted on the top of that. There's leaves and also some ripples in the water. So that gives you the surface. These areas here tell you that it's below the surface. There's a slight distortion to the shapes. They sometimes bend with the water movement, so there's a refraction of the shape. And then as you get further back into the scene, and you're not looking down into the water, you're looking almost straight down into the water here, a little bit on the angle, but the further you get back to the scene, you can no longer look into the water. Now what happens is you start to have more of a reflection, sometimes of other things around, or it starts to pick up a little bit more reflection of the sky, the ambient light above. So you have that, again, that pattern of leaves that follow through. They come a little closer to the viewer. I'll get a little closer so you can see a little bit of the texture and the color, a little bit more yellow-orange to the leaves here, and then as they go back, I'm lessening the yellow and orange, and they're becoming a little bit more just a yellow color. and of course they also diminish in size. That helps to give the perspective going back into the scene further. And again, these logs back here help to tell the story of what you were seeing in front. You can see some of the logs are shown going into the water here. This one going in below the water. Here it's above the water. So what you have back here helps that story to what it's starting to tell the viewer up here. Not that if you didn't have that in back, they wouldn't get it, but it really helps, again, to convey the whole story of what this painting is about. It's about this wonderful, I just call it the emerald, excuse me, an emerald pool, and a wonderful time of day that I happened to catch this, and just this wonderful mountain, cold water mountain stream that was very clear and you could look down in, and so it was really a fun project to work on. Let me quick show you a couple other paintings here. Here's another one that actually I'm doing a larger commission of. This was the study that I did. It's a 12 by 12 study. It's of lily pads and koi. I'm going to have to go a little bit on the angle to keep some of the reflection off. But this one here, there's not a lot going below the surface. First of all, below the surface of the water, other than the koi, and they're almost on at the very top of the surface, so they're not going down below too far. But what is going down further is some of the stems that are coming from the lily pads that connect the lily pads. Obviously, the lily pads are on the surface, but the growth part goes down below into the water, so they start to disappear as they get deeper in the water. The dark blue is of a reflection of trees that were to above and out of the, excuse me, the composition. All the little specks, you're getting some reflections, but there's little specks here and there in the blues and so forth. That gives you a little bit of the surface, helps to tell where the surface is. This helps. You have a lily flower, and then you have the reflection of it. The pads themselves, because they're so thin, they don't really give a reflection. But the lily flower does give a little reflection there. And then occasionally the fish have a distortion to them, where you have a little bit of the surface water coming across. It helps put them below, and then there's not clean edges, but there's distorted edges because of the refraction of what you have with a object slightly below the surface of the water. So this one isn't as deep. It's not showing the kind of depth that the other one did. And then here's some other ones that I had fun painting, some of these fall scenes of rocks in streams that I found close by. This was a vertical piece, and this one's a little bit more shallow, but here again, it's important to have added these. That helps to establish what this is. Without this, it could be a little bit obscure as far as what you're looking at. So certain things are there to support the idea. Obviously, I want the idea of looking down into this water, but there's certain things that help validate that. And you got, again, some of the reflections of the sky and a little bit of the ripples, and then some of the light that's hitting on rocks, distortion of some of the rocks. And then you also have occasionally some shadows from the leaf and the shadow actually coming down onto the rocks as they're below the surface. Here's another one. It's a little bit more subtle, but I really had fun at this particular area painting these leaves, and some of them were below the surface. Excuse me, creating this kind of a nice warmth along with the greens. And again, here you have a leaf above the surface and the cast shadow. A leaf above the surface to cast shadow. Here the rock's coming up higher, the shadow's closer, kind of draping down the rock. Here the leaf is the shadow that's right there. So you know it helps to define that there's different types of depth to the water. That this is further down in, and then you come up and you get to the surface of the water again, where you have some of the leaves that help establish that. So think of all the things that help to validate what what you're painting and what the mission of it is, there's an importance to some of these things that we want to edit out. We feel they are distractions when actually they help to define. And in this case, they help to define the illusion of depth in the water by definitely allowing the viewer to see where the surface is, and then give them the illusion of going down into the depths where there's a less definition, softer edges, and so forth. So something to think about in the challenges of painting the illusions of depth in water.
Hi, my name is Kenn Backhaus, and welcome to this online art instructional course. I've been involved in the arts professionally my entire life. I'm a signature member of the Plein Air Painters of America, master's signature member of both the Oil Painters of America and the American Impressionist Society. My works have appeared in many of the national art magazines. I've been included in several books, to name a few: The Art of the National Parks, Sea to Shining Sea, and The Enchanted Isle Plein Air Painting on Catalina Island. I was one of the hosts for 2 art-related public television series: Plein Air Painting the American Landscape and the art instructional series Passport and Palette. I've been teaching art workshops for over 20 years. Prompted by many students' requests, I created this particular Study to Studio course. This course is developed for either the indoor or outdoor painter. The translation from a reference study to a larger studio painting has always been a challenging process. In this 4-week course, I define the tools of my trade, my palette, and an important color mixing demonstration. I will take you through the same exact process which has proven to be successful for me in the studio, including various creative options that will improve the results of your studio efforts. My process of teaching is wrapped around the sound and historic foundations and principles that are the guidelines that defines quality art. I feel confident and believe that you will discover this course to be very beneficial to your future artistic development. Tucson Art Academy's online courses is the new way for art educational opportunities. I hope to see and work with you in this new online course.